All right. Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining in. I'm so excited for this conversation today. Just, buckle your seatbelts because this is going to be a convo today. I have the honor for Ashley Perkins to be here. She is I'm going to read all her credentials because I told her you work hard for these credentials. So this is important. So she is the founder of Be Well. She has a BA in education. She's a certified life coach, a certified circle keeper, and she is finishing her cognitive behavioral therapy practitioner certification. And so she's going to tell you a little bit about what all that means. But yeah, so just tell us a little bit of, who you are, what you do, what is Be Well. Just give us a little intro of who you are.
Sure, I'll keep it brief. So in short, the mission of Be Well is to develop social and emotional competence within youth between the ages of 4 years and 17 years and their families. And I know we're going to get off into a little bit later, but just to share, social and emotional learning is the process of acquiring and actively applying skills, attitudes, and knowledge necessary to lead quality lives. And so there's 5 areas of competence that you foster and cultivate. And that is self-awareness, self-regulation, relationship and social skills, responsible decision making. And so all of these skills, as I'm sure we're going to get off into a little bit later, are skills that you will never, ever, ever refrain from pulling from. You will always need these skills and these areas of competence if you have a plan to lead a quality life. And so a little bit personally about me, as Rachel mentioned, I am always looking to acquire a certification or a degree that will help me best serve, help me best do my part in the community to restore it, that will help me best walk alongside people and pour into people and heal people. And so, yeah, I am a certified circle keeper, and I know we're going to get off into what a circle is and what a circle keeper is, and cognitive behavioral therapy practitioner. So I am not a therapist. I'm going to put that out there. I'm not a therapist. But CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, it's really just bringing people into an awareness of how their mentality dictates their actions. And you just want to lead them through that process of discovery. And life coaching closely aligns with that. Again, life coaching is not a therapist. We focus on the present. We may refer to the past just to kind of give some context on a person, but we really look at right now, the present. What is an obstacle now? How can I walk alongside you to move you into a more promising, healthy future? And I think that's pretty much all the credentials she named. But that's pretty much who I am. And as a result, Be Well also offers life coaching, circle keeping, which we call restorative integration. We have not certified, but clinical social workers, and we have restorative coaches. And so, yeah, we are committed to developing social and emotional competence in all who want to be well. So that's me.
What drew you to this field? So when because you don't just like end up right. Usually it's like a path that leads you there, and it's a passion. And I think any person that's in a helping profession, it's not just a career, it's a calling, right? So what led you to this path of saying, okay, this is my niche?
Yeah. You know what? I'm like, how deep do I want to go? So it's crazy. It's seriously, because it's crazy. I remember the defining moment that kind of served as a catalyst to me, like, following this whole process through. So I remember I was in my last semester, my second semester of my senior year in undergrad. And I just knew, I said, I know that I have a passion for education, educating people, empowering people, but I did not want to be buckled down to gen eds. I didn't want to be confined to the 4 walls of the classroom, but I knew that I wanted to be before people, educating them and empowering them with knowledge. And so I didn't know, I did not know what that meant. I just knew I didn't want to be a teacher necessarily. And so what happened was I wound up taking an internship at this place called By the Hand Club for Kids, which actually turned
out to work there.
Yeah. So that was my first job out of undergrad. And yeah, so when I was interning, I connected with these babies who were marginalized and exiled and forgotten about, and literally immersed myself in just the heart of the Black experience, the heart of just, I was like literally at the counter, first part of like witnessing like systemic racism and institutionalized like violence, right? And so just observing that, I just realized there were so many things that weren't being addressed, that these babies were just kind of left to their own vices, to survive and to navigate through this systemic, terrible mess. And so as a result, like I carried that in my heart. Just how the conversations that I had with these kids, and the things that I saw, like these babies, like I would have to like talk them off ledges of wanting to kill themselves. I would have to talk them off ledges of little girls and little boys like being sexually active. Like it just really left an imprint on my heart. I wanted to do more than just work for somebody. I wanted to be a part of the conversation by bringing something additionally to the conversation I just felt wasn't there. And so I just kind of kept sensing that nudge, and I finally like took some time to sit with, what do I want to do with this burden that I have? And their lives be well.
And I think that's where, you know, anybody who, if you're questioning like what do I do, it's like find a problem and then become the solution. I think that's pretty much like what it is just like, you know, even when I came up with this, because I was just like, I really wrestled because I was like, Lord, like I'm still early in my career. You know, there's so many other people who do it probably more eloquently and, you know, can do all these things, you know, but it's literally just like, if I don't see people doing this, I don't see people making this accessible or having these conversations, then create a space for it. And so I think, you know, that's for everybody. Just like find a problem, be the solution. And that's where you really wind up in your calling. That's where you wind up, you know, exactly where you're meant to be, serving where you need to serve. So just a word of encouragement to everybody out there. So let's just kind of jump in. So when people hear, you know, social and emotional learning, you know, kind of, you mentioned like the 5 principles of it. So what is it, you know, and what does that look like in practice?
So social and emotional learning was developed to kind of serve as some type of like aid to kids from marginalized communities, in order to kind of equip them to have successful academic careers. And it's, you know, it's so much more to a person than their academic career. Like, you know, like these very same areas of competence are areas that we need to thrive and excel and to navigate, to manage ourselves. And so as a result, people started catching wind, and you really don't hear people have the conversation in this way. But Be Well really pushes it beyond the classroom, that, hey, these skill sets are not just for kids. Let's start there. And then number 2, these skills are not just valuable within the 4 walls of a classroom. You need these to make decisions. You need these to, you know, manage yourself when responding to obstacles and hardships. You need this to identify your weaknesses, your strengths, you know, your interests, your disinterests. And so basically, again, the areas are self-awareness, self-regulation, relationship and social skills, social awareness, and responsible decision making. And so basically, to foster that and to cultivate that, you have to continuously immerse yourself in spaces in which conversations or activities are causing you to pull from that well. So just as an example of something that Be Well does is we may have a restorative circle, or what we call it as a safe space circle. Well, there are different wells that you pull from, different areas of competence that you pull from when participating in a safe space circle. You have to be self-aware when you're responding truthfully. You have to be socially aware when you're listening to others, that you may deeply empathize. And then just the fact that you're a part of such a sacred process, you're building relationship and social skills.
Absolutely.
And then just to take it a step further, depending on the nature of the safe space circle, it could be a consensus decision-making circle. What are you pulling from? You're pulling from another area of competence, responsible decision-making. And so that's just an example of, to your point when you said, what does that look like when you're fostering that? It's about immersing yourself, as I said, in spaces and participating in certain activities in which you have to pull from those areas of competence, pull from that skill set, pull from that knowledge base. And that's a practice that we need to do, not just as children, but as adults in our relationships, right? Where we work, in our platonic relationships, in our romantic relationships. Like, you have to pull from, and when you're trying to be intentional about fostering and cultivating those areas of competence, there has to be, again, a means of self-awareness in which you are gauging, am I promoting a pro-social relationship? Like, are my relationships healthy? Do I feel empowered? Do I feel like my relationships at work, do I feel like my gifts and my strengths are being acknowledged? Like, there's absolutely nothing that we can name right now on this broadcast that doesn't require one of these areas of competence. And so what it looks like to build it is to, number one, gain knowledge of the areas, what those areas entail, and have self-reflection, like have moments where you're evaluating, how am I doing in this area? How did I handle this situation? Did I make a rash decision, or did I make a constructive decision? And just having those conversations both with yourself and with others with like minds who are also actively applying these skill sets, this knowledge, and possessing those necessary attitudes. And so, yeah, that's my response to how do you actually cultivate those areas of competence.
Yeah, and that's so important, because and especially to learn it so young, because, you know, I'm just thinking, it's like, literally, I'm sitting here and I'm just like, if half of my clients had those skills, they probably wouldn't even need me. You know, they wouldn't be adults, you know, who are dealing, because those are the things that we're doing in therapy sessions. You know, we're talking about emotional regulation. We're talking about self-awareness. We're talking about how to, you know, be reflective about the health of your relationships. But for a lot of people, adults, this is the first time they've ever encountered that. You know, this is the first time that they really are addressing, like, maybe I'm not in, you know, the best patterns that I could be in. And I just imagine a world where it's like, if we're starting this, like you said, with the youngest was 4. If we're starting at 4, you know, then by the time you're 44, you know, my thing is like, I want to be put out of a job, right? You know, I always tell my clients, like, the whole point of this is like, by the time we get to the end of this, you shouldn't need me. Like, the goal is not that you need me forever, is that I'm equipping you so that you can do life without me. But it's like, we can start at 4 and we can start practicing these things. And it's like, that we're such a healthier people, you know, because of it. And so it's so needed. And there's no area in our life where we won't utilize those skills.
We won't. Yeah, there's absolutely no escaping it. And unfortunately, somewhere along the way, adults get lost in translation and believing that they have to cultivate those areas. And it's like, how so? Like, how do you come to this point in believing that you no longer have to foster and cultivate those areas? Like, this is no longer part of your vocabulary. This is no longer a means or a measure you have to go about. I just don't get it, because, I mean, my goodness, like, we continue to evolve and develop and change, right? Take on new obstacles, right? I don't know about you, but I'm not facing the same obstacles I was when I was 5.
No.
So, you know, like, I'm continuously having not even last year, shoot, not even last week. So it's just like, you know, like, we are always faced with new challenges, which means we have to up the ante and continue to fortify those areas. And so I just don't get how it gets lost in translation. And so as a result, B will always push us like, hey, we're trying to create healthy family dynamics. Like, this is not best for your 4-year-old up to the 7-year-old. Once they graduate, okay, you're good. You made it. Right? No, like, this is the real world. So now take another look and fortify those areas, because as the obstacles get bigger, you're going to have to pull from those areas and ensure that they're fortified, you know, because you just can't escape it. You just can't escape it. So
yeah. You mentioned earlier, talking about the circle and safe spaces and kind of that restorative. So when you think about, number one, restorative justice and like what that is, for people who may have heard of it but don't really understand it, and then what does circle keeping look like?
Yeah, sure. So restorative justice allows you to, well, basically, so in short, the definition of restorative justice is providing a space in which we can repair the harm and also gauge how we respond as a community to the harm. And so in short, you just take a look at the harm that was done, and you manage how you respond. Instead of wanting to be punitive, you identify the root cause. Why did this happen? What are our next steps to keep this from happening again? I'm harmed. What do I need from you to feel put back together again and safe in community with you? And then there's a role with community. Community has to basically hold the two parties accountable to what they come out of that space declaring they're going to do moving forward.
Yeah.
That's really it in short. And even though the definition may be short, it's a tedious process.
I was going to say, that sounds intense. You talk about that's it. Like, that's intense.
It's so tedious because, like, one, you have to get them to a point where they're ready to confront. Like, that's one of, like, the principles of it is like, okay, am I ready to encounter the person that hurt me? And then being willing to be open to forgiveness, be open to reconciliation, and being willing to identify the fact that reconciliation is a possibility. A lot of people, when we look at just our legal system, they're very punitive. They're like, oh, you did this? Boom, let's punish it. Instead of, all right, true justice is there's some repairing, there's some restoration that takes place. Because this crime or act was done because of an origin, a root cause. So let's address that evil, right? Let's address the root cause and then put something in place in order to keep that evil, if you will, from taking place again. And whereas the justice system is just like, you're evil, you'll forever be evil. Let's you as evil and let's send you away.
Yeah.
No.
And they say it's supposed to be rehabilitation, but we know that it's not. And we know that it's really not true justice. Like you said, it's very punitive, and there is no space to evolve and to grow. And don't even get me started on the justice.
That's a whole life.
It's a whole other. So what would circle keeping look like? Because obviously, besides everything that's going on, we're in the middle of a pandemic. So but a lot of people are really trying to reconcile some things right now. So what does that look like in communities, even in the midst of this COVID-19 thing? What would that look like?
Yeah. So circles are a sacred, beautiful place, in which parties of different backgrounds with different dynamics are able to come into this safe space. So when you think about the average meeting, like just a regular meeting, there's dynamic, there's hierarchy, there's like this structure, like there's one person that's responsible for the space. Whereas in a circle, this is a mutual collaborative effort in which we all determine the guidelines, what is going to guide us through this process safely, what is going to keep us from being guarded, what is necessary to feel safe, what needs to be put in place to help me lean into my discomfort, how can I aid you to keep you connected, to keep you present. And so the circle keeper, sure, they facilitate it in the sense of ensuring that the guidelines in place remain the responsibility. I'll word it this way. The circle keeper's responsibility is to ensure that the space remains the responsibility of all those present. And hopefully that makes sense. Because again, this is the effort. This is a collective collaborative effort, a collaborative act in which we identify a resolve together as a group. And we work through it. We say, hey, because again, circles have different natures. You have a peace circle, you have a conflict resolution circle, you have a consensus decision-making circle, you have an affirmation circle. And so you determine as a group, hey, we need a peace circle.
Yeah.
You know, and then that is our resolve. That is our resolve. That is what we are together as a group aiming to achieve out
Yeah.
of this circle is a sense of peace, a sense of resolve. And so my responsibility as a circle keeper is I ask the right questions to evoke the right set of emotions. Um,
Yeah.
and here's the catch though, I'm a part of this community. So I
Mm-hmm.
can't ask questions and just sit back. I have to ask
Mm-hmm.
a question and respond as well.
Yeah.
Right. And I have to be first partaker of whatever I'm feeding them. So if
Mm.
I'm saying feel comfortable, if I'm saying feel safe, if I'm saying be honest and transparent and genuine,
Yeah.
I have to be it first. I have to model it.
Yeah.
And the beautiful thing about circles, so just to kind of give you the setup of it, so it is a circle. We're all on the same level. So everything about a circle is symbolic. Everything. So
Yeah.
we're sitting in a circle, right? A circle that has no breach in it. So that's symbolism. And then we're all sitting on the same level. If one person sits on the floor, we all sit on the floor. If
Mm.
one person sits on the table, we all sit on the table, right?
Yeah.
If we're on the we all on the ceiling. And so it keeps us on the same level. And what happens is that there's no interruption. One person speaks at a time, and there is no backtracking. There is no, oh, I'll toss it to you over there. No, we move to the left. And
Mm.
you are, I don't want to say forced, you are invited to listen. You are invited to empathize. You are invited to connect and hear from another person. And the circle keeper's responsibility is to remind everyone of their responsibility to this space, which is why we establish guidelines from jump. Like
Yeah.
what do we need? Right. And then when someone is breaching one of those guidelines, I as the keeper says, now let's be mindful that
Right.
we decided as a community, this is
Mm-hmm.
what we're going to refrain from doing in this space. And that's it. I don't advise, I don't give counseling. I literally just sit, ask the questions, and just move us around. And I just watch the process unfold.
Yeah.
And it's beautiful. It's
Yeah.
beautiful.
And I could see, we have a question, but just real quick, I think that that would be so powerful right now, for those who have been watching everything that's going on. There was
Yeah.
a big uproar in Little Village, right? About, the Latin Kings and just all this stuff, and it's so crazy because it's like there's two minorities who they're then pitting each other, themselves against each other. And it's like that would be the perfect opportunity for a circle saying, okay, we need to be peaceful because we need to be united, and so I would love to sit in a circle like that. And hopefully we're able to do that, sometime soon to have these types of circles, especially among minorities, because I think it's so necessary, and I guess not even minorities too, but I think especially for minorities because, we need each other, and we experience similar types of oppression and we need to be able to build one another up. So definitely. One of the questions that someone had I put up on the screen, Jessica was asking tips on how to knock down walls of super strong women.
I mean, I think that a way in which to knock down the walls, honestly, would be you become vulnerable in front of that strong woman.
Mm-hmm.
Because what will probably more than likely happen is that strong woman will connect with your vulnerabilities. And then from there, you'll be able to build a sisterhood. A lot of women are strong because they've had to overcome some form of insecurity, if I'm just being honest.
No, that's completely real.
So as a result, just kind of reminding our strong sisters, like, sis, I've overcome just like you. And let me see if you have, and I believe from there it can blossom. I think that a lot of us have to reveal the ashes behind our beauty. And I think as a result, man, like literally, like you can, with those very same ashes, like build a fortified sisterhood.
And it's so hard because I think, and especially, and I can only really speak from the experience of a Black woman, but I think that we are socialized to be strong, right? So whether that's with other women and just in our communities in general, it's like we carry all these burdens, most of them unnecessary. And so because of that, it's so hard. We don't have many safe spaces. And so I think it's so important to be intentional about creating safe spaces. One of the things I always talk to women about is like, who are your friends? What does your circle look like? And then keep that circle tight and keep that circle safe. And that's how you do it. I was actually talking with someone earlier and they're just asking that question of like being vulnerable. And I was like, I treat friendships almost like dating, right? I have to vet somebody out. I can give you a little bit of myself, see what you do with it, see if you steward it well, and then I can give you a little bit more. That's how you build trust. That's how you continue to be vulnerable with someone. Because if you give too much too soon, then it's like, then they can just completely betray your trust. But if you build that up, then that's how you, and then it allows you to break those walls down more. But I think you definitely have to be intentional about it, because being vulnerable is uncomfortable. It's never going to feel good. But it feels good eventually. I won't say it never feels, it's very uncomfortable in the beginning. But once you get to a safe space, it's very healing. And I think especially among women, like I find there's so much power when women tell each other things versus when they hear it from a man. It is so much more powerful. Like even like just something as compliments. If you think about if you're walking down the street and a man compliments you versus like if a woman's like, girl, those eyebrows. What? It's so much more. And it's like, why? It's like, because we have such power. And I think that that's just the power of a woman in general. I always tell women, especially like in couple relationships and stuff, that women, we have such power in our words and in our tongues, and just our words can set the atmosphere for our homes, and all of that. And it's like, we do that in our friendships as well. But again, that has to be taught. I just recently, I try to be really intentional. My daughter probably hates it, but it's like, I bought her a shirt that says, real queens fix each other's crowns. Place, y'all. I'm like, all right, children's place. But even that, I'm like, at 9, she needs to know that we are not in competition with one another, that you can shine and allow someone else to shine at the exact same time. And it does not diminish everything that you're doing. Like, there is only one you. But I think that, again, I don't remember learning that when I was younger. I very much felt in competition with a lot of other young women growing up. And I was like, it was such a horrible feeling, and it's so unnecessary. But we still see that. I know, I'm sure you can speak to it even as a mother. Like, even when you get into mother communities, and don't let it be on Facebook or something like that, there's so much competition. Well, I do this, and I breastfed like this, and I do, and it's just like, well, can you just support? Can you just? But that doesn't happen.
Yeah, I think that the problem is that society has created our standards for us instead of us time to create our own standards. Or pulling from a source in which we can consider to be credible as a standard. I think that has been instrumental for me. Like when I was growing up, like my mom, like I feel like my mom over empowered me. Like I felt like I could do anything. Which is good, like my mom, like you see, my mom will always let me know, like, oh, you're so smart, you're so talented, you're so beautiful. Like I can never say, oh, she's pretty, with my mom saying you're pretty too, and it's like, I know. But I think every woman has to take ownership. I think everybody, let me just put that out there, has to take ownership for the values and the belief systems that's been instilled in them. And so that's one. Even though it was instilled in me, not just my mom, but my aunts, my uncles, like my cousins, like they would let me know, like, you're this, you're that, you're this. And I heard them, but I had to take the ownership of what was being said, what was being spoken over me. And that has been instrumental for me, at least, is identifying my own standard. Realize a person is not my standard. What another person does is not my standard. My personal standard is how God views me. So scripture has been instrumental for me taking ownership for what has always been spoken over me. But like I said, I took ownership when I decided to believe that I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. When I decided to believe that just as God had beautiful, good thoughts towards Jeremiah, he has those very same thoughts for me. And I was worth dying for. Like I took ownership for that belief system and that value system. And now, like, I don't want this to come out wrong, but I feel like you would agree with me if I say this. I believe that when women yank off the chains of the standards of this world, or the standards that's been placed over them, they tend to supersede those standards. Like once they take ownership for their own standard, own vision for things, they supersede it.
Yeah.
And I really believe that that is what happened. I believe that even though I was always poured into, like, my vision of myself is, it's not arrogance, it's not cockiness,
No.
but it's
No.
almost just like humility of like, God, you invested this much in me,
Yeah.
you view me in this way. And so my response in short is, you have to acknowledge and identify your own standard and not live up to a standard of society or a standard that has been placed over you, even if it is a good standard, even
Yeah.
if it is a good standard. But you'd be surprised of how that ante can be upped, or that standard can be upped, when you decide to take ownership and identify your own standard.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think, because and I love that you said it doesn't necessarily have to be a bad thing, right?
Right.
I'm out of my biological siblings, I am the first child and the only girl. And so it's like there was this huge standard of like being this high achiever, doing all this, being the role model. And it wasn't bad, but it put on unnecessary pressure, and it created a lot of anxiety in me when I was growing up, and just like and control issues that I still, am trying to be free from, because it's just like, but I had to then change the standard of being able to say, okay, like maybe I'm not going to achieve the things that my parents wanted from me or something, but let me find out what God wants from me. And then in that, like you said, that's where that thriving really came from. When you get into your lane, in the correct lane, then that's when you thrive. And like I said, it is, you glow a little bit differently, but it comes from being able to say, okay, I need to know what God is calling me to. And I need to know, where am I going? And that makes a huge difference. It makes all the difference in the world, honestly. Yeah. So we, talking kind of about that. So one issue that I thought was really good, and I want to pull up this quote, but while I'm looking for it, so we mentioned just especially about the social pressures, even of Black women, and trying to be strong. So in the light of everything that's going on now, and what do you feel about justice when it comes to Black women? Because obviously, we talk about the Black Lives Matter movement and all of that, but it's not just Black men, it's Black women as well. And so a lot of times we don't necessarily see justice at the same rate for Black women that we do it for Black men. We don't necessarily see the murderers get charged, and accused. And even if we do, we don't necessarily see the same celebration that happens when it is Black men. And I, just as a Black woman, how do we process that? Because I feel like we go very hard for everybody else, but we often don't see that reciprocated. So, what are some of your thoughts? I'm gonna look down because I'm looking for this quote, but just, what are your thoughts?
My thoughts is this is nothing new. I think similar to, so the response that we are giving, and it is so deserving, it's so necessary. This is global participation, of just fighting for just equity for our Black men. Is going to require the same thing for our women. But I do, to her point, the young lady that just made a point, we do feel forgotten about, but at the same time, I also feel like we've just accepted it and we're used to it. It's the norm. And it's something about a woman that is just willing to go to bats for our men. And I think, similar to a comment that was made earlier, we have to get to a point where that sisterhood, strengthens, in which we are willing to go to bats just as hard as we go to bats for our men. And then our men, which is a whole other conversation, have to be willing to go to bats just as hard for us as we go for them. And so I think that just as we're demanding certain things, and that those demands are being responded and met, the same thing is going to have to be in place for us women, us Black women, because to your point, our lives do matter as well. And I think that we forget that the Black Lives Matter movement includes Black women lives, And again, I just think that there's just this subservient, like, position that women have taken in society, in the public eye, and we've just accepted it. We're okay with being the meek, subservient, like we go hard for our men, but it's time for us to hold our men accountable to go just as hard for us.
Yeah.
That's how I feel about it.
Absolutely. And Ryan, he put in the comments Antoine, and it was so funny because if you guys have ever seen the movie Antoine Fisher, if you haven't, number one, it's an amazing really movie. Good. It's so good. I'm probably gonna have to watch it just because we're talking about. But you know, there's a part in the film when they talk about, you know, who will cry for the little boy, you know, because the little boy that was inside of him that had no justice, you know, and nobody was really protecting him and all that, you know, and he had to be like, you know, I will. And I feel as Black women, like we have to get to that space, right? Because I remember even just when my brother was saying like, oh, you should talk about this, I almost felt uncomfortable because I was just like, oh, I don't want to take the shine away from, you know, what's going on, or I don't want to, you know, but it's just like, why do we do that? Why do we put ourselves on the back burner to say, you know, why are we not just as important? You know, we are preaching it to everybody else, you know, that like, hey, you know, just like it's not the all lives matter, it's Black lives matter, right? Because they're the ones in danger, but it's the same, you know, Black women matter too, you know, that it's like we're the ones in danger, we're not seeing justice. The quote that I wanted to share is from Malcolm X, and I'm sure everybody has heard this one, but he once said, the most disrespected person in America is the Black woman. The most unprotected person in America is the Black woman. The most neglected person in America is the Black woman. And we see that, you know, consistently. We see that when, you know, we, again, even with the hashtags, and it's not necessarily that I feel we should take away from anyone else's death because everyone's death should be honored, but it's just like, we don't see it equitably, right? We don't see the same treatment for women. We don't see, you know, that it's like, hey, this matters too. And I love that someone said, you know, not feeling protected. You know, as Black women, you know, we will go to bat, you know, especially for our Black men. Like, we will fight on the front lines, you know, get tear gas and do all these things. And it's like, we just want to see that reciprocity, you know, and how does that come about? How do we become more vocal about that? And not be afraid to say, okay, oh, well, it's bashing or it's distracting, you know, how do we do that?
Well, one, context, like Black lives matter.
Yeah.
The context says it all, like Black lives, Black women, Black men, Black children, right? And acknowledging that we don't have to ask for a seat at the table.
Yes.
We wouldn't have a seat at the table without us in the first place.
Come on.
And just acknowledging that we matter and we don't need the validation of another person, and us just simply sitting sitting at the table and vocalizing. Because here's the thing, we're already at the table. Some of our women have given up their seats at the table. Some of our women are at the table and they're letting the men do all the talking. And the table is society, so that I can just be clear on what I'm saying. No, like, sis, go get your chair, come back to the table. Sis that's already at the table, open your mouth. Stop just allowing the society to be spearheaded by men. Like, you have a seat, use it, feel it, right? And so that's my response. Context, understanding that you were already at the table. You don't need an invitation to the table, and let's be clear on who made the table. So it's just, you know, I'm just saying, you know, and I believe that it is going to require a critical mass of women to remember that, to take a look at the context that we are already included. You know, we don't need to be validated. Validated for what? Do I have to confirm that there's a sun and a moon in the sky? No, right? Like, we can clearly see it with our own eyes that it exists, right? And that it functions with or without my command. And so it's the same thing with us women. Like, we just have to use our voice. And just as society is doing an excellent job, made history, all 50 states protested on behalf of George Floyd. Absolutely beautiful. We need that exact same buy-in, petitioning, pushing, demanding, mandating from our women. That's what it's going to take, using our voices.
Yeah. And even for, I'm even just thinking about society for allies, because women, and it's not just Black women either, like women have always been, a disenfranchised group. We had the suffrage movement and all of that, so that's definitely a thing. But those allies, because especially, non-Black women will want Black women to be allies for feminism. Well, then that's where you need to be, allies for us in making sure that the Black woman's voice is heard. Because you can't be just a one type of feminist. If you're going to be a feminist, you need to be a feminist for all women, and what that looks like. And being more vocal about it. And then, like, I love that though. This just like, as women, we just have to not worry about people being uncomfortable, especially as Black women, because they're gonna say whatever they want to say, right? I watched that Michelle Obama, the Becoming on Netflix, and it was so good because she went through a lot when she first, she really had to kind of change herself a little bit, right? Because at first they were just like, they're like, oh, she's too militant and she's too
Right.
and it's like, and it's so frustrating because we can't be passionate without being seen as militant, and so, but I think you can be soft and strong at the same time. But if I don't feel like being soft in the moment, then I'm not going to be, and that can be okay. And we have to create spaces where it is okay, no matter what anybody says. And I think that, but if we have support, and again, our Black men supporting us, just men and in general being able to support and say, no, let her be heard, then that's where we start being able to make that more of a norm in our society.
Absolutely. You mentioned the women's suffrage movement. It blew my mind to learn that we were all women. Literally all women were the last to no longer be deemed as property. Even the like Blacks were free from slavery. But we were still deemed as women all the way until the early 1900s. It's just mind-boggling. And a shame, because just as oh my goodness, and I get emotional sometimes when I think about it, how our Black forefathers built this country, but weren't deemed as citizens of this country. And it's like, it's the same. I always want to use it as like symbolism or hyperbole or just some type of example of how we gave birth to the men who have yet to validate us, yet to acknowledge us, yet to go to bats for us. And it's just like, wow. It's just like, wow. And so, like when I really like realized that, like, wow, early 1900s. I'm not property, like, wow. So just realizing how that quote is so true. Relevant to this day. And how we too, like, those amendments apply to us. We too have freedom of speech.
Absolutely.
We too have the right to peacefully assemble. We too have the right to petition the government. And realizing, again, I keep saying this, but we don't have to ask for a seat at the table. Right? Like, we're already at the table, and it's just time just to use our voices.
And I think be recognized for the unique struggle that we've had specifically as Black women, because I think about back at, what was it, World War II, when it was kind of Rosie the Riveter and all that going on, and it was like, oh, the men are at war and everything, so women had to take on these new set of roles and all this, and it was kind of this empowerment for what it meant to be a woman and what it meant to be strong. But then that got lost, because then when Black women experienced everything that happened with the crack epidemic and all of that, and then the Black man being taken strategically from the family, we had to be strong, but then it wasn't glorified. We didn't get posters. We didn't get, a whole icon and mascot for what that looked like. It was like, no, you just work with the hand that you were dealt, and so, and it's like dealing with that disparity, because those are two different Americas, of what it means to America. So it's like, we're women, but then there's the added layer of that we're Black women. And though we had a very similar situation of having to take on these new roles and these new strengths, ours was not celebrated.
Yeah, absolutely. Just having to choose between having a family unit and being a single mom in order to get support from the government.
Mm,
Um, People
yeah,
literally, showing up at your home to confirm that you are in fact a poor single Black woman, to continue giving you provision from the government.
yeah,
It's systemic upon systemic racism,
mhm,
institutionalized violence, structural violence, however you want to
yeah,
purpose it. And to your point, like, not only are we forgotten about as women, but we have that added layer of being a Black woman,
yeah,
having to deal with the structural violence of it all.
yeah,
So it's absolutely ridiculous. But
yeah,
again, that is going to require, it's the same process. It's the exact same process in
mhm,
which we challenge systems. Just as we are rising up and challenging systems for our men, it's
yeah,
time for us to, while the momentum is going, to
yeah,
also rise up and challenge these very same systems, challenging elected officials, pushing for new policies. I
yeah,
mean, it's like the solution is not new. We just have to continue to persist in it. The same
absolutely,
amendment that tells us to petition the government, right? The
yeah,
same amendment that tells us you have freedom of speech, freedom of press, freedom of petitioning the government and peacefully assembling, right?
mhm,
Like those very same things, you just have to continue to persist in it. The solutions, and I just had this conversation, I have finally come to the understanding that the solutions may never necessarily change.
mm,
Um, but what needs to happen though is there has to be a critical mass of people that are pushing the solutions together, and not
absolutely,
just pushing them together, but being persistent and
yeah,
consistent, and not letting up until you get what you want,
yeah,
until your mandates are met, right? And
yeah,
so I just think that, hey, like, the momentum is rolling. Like I said,
yeah,
we just made history, all 50 states.
all 50 states,
And so
yeah,
if we can get that same momentum,
yeah,
keep that same energy, as they say,
mhm,
just like our mandates are being met for George Floyd, our mandates can be met for us women. And what's crazy, I'm gonna say this, I'm gonna pass it back to you. What's crazy is that all Black people say we have to work twice as hard,
mhm,
right, to get what the system has in place for the whites.
right,
Women have to work 4 times as hard,
yeah,
right?
absolutely,
Like, we have to not only get the degree, but we got to get a certification. And
mhm,
along with the certification, we got to have to have the good credit. And on
right,
top of it, we just have to, like, be
yeah,
pristine and
mm,
character,
yeah,
pristine on our records, pristine, like, in order to at least get a glance beyond just being objectified.
right,
And it's just, we just hate the same systems that's suppressing and oppressing our marginalized Black and brown, not even just the marginalized, but just us Blacks. Because listen, every Black and brown person does not live in an impoverished community, yet we are treated as if we are, right?
mm,
Very same systems, these very same, and the fact that there is a difference in how a person that lives in a certain social economic community is treated is
no,
in itself disgusting,
yeah,
right? Just the fact that, just based off my color, right? I said, made the statement today. It doesn't matter what degree I have. It doesn't matter if I speak um, eloquently and articulate my words.
yeah,
Um, no matter where I live, none of that cover my body. I
mhm,
am still going to be objectified, because this is me looking at it from two different lenses. I'm still going to be objectified because I'm a woman, and I'm still going to be discriminated against because I'm a Black woman.
yes,
So
yep,
these very same systems, you just got to challenge them. Use your voice,
yeah.
exercise your rights, challenge these systems.
Absolutely. Yeah, you took
Yeah.
the words out, like, so, and I think that's the key is it can't just be about movement. It has to be about momentum. There has to be consistency, because that's the only way that change is going to happen. It can't just be we get one small victory and then we stop. It has to
Right.
be something that's consistent, and you brought up such a great thing. And I was literally just saying this earlier, because I was even just talking about, even with like the riots and the protests and everything that's going on, I had a very distinct thing because I've always been exposed to even just a different socioeconomic class, and what that looks like. It's a very different America being Black in Beverly than being Black in Chatham or being Black. It's very different.
Yeah.
And being aware of that, but also, you know, because then there was this certain thing where it's like when I was growing up, then it was almost proving your blackness, right? It was being able to say, well, if you grew up in these areas and you grew up in these arenas, then it's like, well, how black are you? You know, and it's that kind of thing. And it's just like, well, no, like the struggle is the struggle because it doesn't matter what neighborhood I go to. Like you said, how eloquently I speak, they're still going to be like, oh, you know, you're still you know, it doesn't change. You know, right. So in the education, and then again, it's almost proven even more of, you know, how did you earn that education? You know, where did you get, you know, all my goodness. Yeah, just being aware of these different levels and I think that's how we show grace to one another, though, and be kind, because even if I am from a different experience, we all have this commonality of the Black experience.
Oh yeah, Black experience.
You know, in a funny way, we always laugh at it because everybody's got that same crystal cup in their thing. You know, when people post it, like, oh, my grandma got that plate. You know, so it's like we've all had this Black experience. Right. You know, whether you are across the country or whether, you know, you grew up in the same city. You know, but just knowing that has to transcend beyond just these funny things. Oh, yeah. Transcend to how we are relating to one another, how we're accepting one another, how we're encouraging one another, because that's the only way we're going to see some change. That's the only way we're going to see anything remotely different.
Yeah. And we have to, you know, there's certain things that we have to like dispel and break down in our own Black community. So your point, colorism, you know, colorism, coming up against that, you know, and addressing, like, it doesn't matter my skin tone, I'm Black. Right. Yeah. And then, like, to your point, how we look down on our own people based on their socioeconomic community grouping, right? Yeah. Oh, they live there, you know, like, oh, you grew up there, you know, and it's just like there's division among us, right? Yeah. And for crying out loud, like, the majority is the majority because they're unified in their bigotry. They're unified in their white supremacy. They're unified in their racism. Like, they're on the same page with their structural violence and institutionalized racism, right? Like, they're on the same page with these systems. Whereas here we are, you know, judging and discriminating against one another because, oh, I make more money than you, or I live in this area, or, you know, I have this job, and it's just absolutely ridiculous. And it was mentioned before, it's going to require unity, getting on the same page, acknowledging that we are one, you know, and that no matter how I speak, before I open my mouth, what is going to meet the eye? And as a response, we respond based off our perceptions, right? And so before my mouth opens, before I even get out the car, right? Let a person from a different race, who is racist, not every white person is racist.
Right.
I want to be sure that we get that, and not every cop is bad. Right. And so, just being aware of, but that Black experience is still there, right? And that, absolutely, Jessica, we are one. And how, as a result, like, because of that, like, to me, this is what should dispel all of those discriminative acts within our own Black community, is that before I open my mouth, there's already an in-place perception from a white supremacist or a bigot, basically. They're literally just going to see a Black N-word. You know, I'm just gonna, you know, filter it, but you know, that in itself should show that we are one, facing the exact same Black experience. This is not just my problem, your fight. This is our fight. Because they don't stop to say, well, wait a minute, how much you make? What's your job? Right. Where did you grow up? What degree you have? You know, they say that you're Black and that I'm Black, and because of that, they hate us. Yeah, absolutely. They hate us. Yep. So this is our fight, not just my fight or your fight. Yeah. And I just wanted to provide space, just to, you know, I know that earlier they did it for George Floyd, which was a super powerful moment, you know, taking those, what was it, 8 minutes and 46 seconds, you know, and all that. But I just wanted to, you know, I saw this and I think it's so important, just to like bring, you know, so, you know, Breonna Taylor's murder is still free. Sandra Bland's murder is still free. Pamela Turner's murder is still free. Corinne Gaines' murder is still free. Deborah Danner's murder is still free. Black women's lives matter and are worthy of justice. And, you know, I just think it's important to, you know, continue, just as we say, you know, his name, we have to continue saying her name, you know,
Sandra Bland, Breonna Taylor, Atiana Jefferson, Chantel Davis, things, and it's so easily forgotten. There was another young lady, I can't remember her name now, but she was the one, we were talking about earlier that was, found dead at the sleepover in 2018.
Yes. I forget her name. Yes.
And so just being just as consistent, again, that's where we need to see that momentum with being just as consistent of not letting these, because, Trayvon Martin happened in 2012 and it's 2020 and we still, that's one of the first things that we're going to say. And so we need to come, like I said, match that same energy for our sisters, and making sure that, their voices don't go ignored, and that their legacy wasn't just for anything, that they didn't just die for anything. They weren't just killed because they didn't die. They weren't just killed for nothing.
Right. I think about how, I saw this beautiful sign at one of the protests. White woman actually made the sign. She said, when he called out for mama, that was a call for all the mamas.
Yes.
And I was like, yes, it hit me. Yeah. And that's the same thing. When Sandra or Brianna lost their voice, that was a call for me to use my voice on their behalf.
Yeah.
And, I would love to see what would be the result of this same energy being matched for those women's names that we just said, all 50 states at the exact same time.
Wow. It'd be powerful.
It would be powerful.
I was watching the news earlier, and so the cover of Time is going to be a woman, and she's holding the figure of a boy, but the boy is invisible, and it's to represent, losing her son, which is, heavy enough as it is. But I also would wonder, what would that look like reversed? Right? What would it look like for, the mom to be invisible? What would it look like of seeing, what is the world like without the presence of mothers, without the presence of women? The world would cease to exist. This is not on some, highlight who run the world, but it's very seriously, women being creators and being vessels, like this is who we are. And so I think it's so important to honor that, and so I hope that even with that cover, I know they have around the red border, it's I think they said it was like 35 names of Black men and women who were killed. But even in that, I don't want to lose the importance of that mother, because that mother, again, it's just kind of like, oh, there's so much, like she lost her son, but it's like, now what reality is she going to have to deal with in losing her son? How strong is she going to have to be for the other children she has? How strong is she going to be for the community? This is going to be that same woman who's going to be marching the next time a hashtag pops up.
Yes, the exact same woman who's grieving the loss of her son.
Yeah.
Want to tap into a reservoir.
Yeah.
To continue doing what she does best, and that's going to bats for others.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's so important, and I think we're on the right path. I think that, as crazy as 2020 has been, I think this has been such a necessary year for a lot of awakenings. And I'm just praying that these awakenings continue, and that it's a call to action. I think that 2020 is a call to action. I think it's a call to action in the earth. It's a call to action in the spiritual realm, that there's just so much that's going on, that we have to stop and pay attention. And I think it's necessary, and it's painful, but, I think no revolution comes without that kind of painful necessity.
Yeah, it's, if you want, desperate times call for desperate measures. Change only begins in systems, on the level of systems. And so here we are, times are desperate. Change is needed. And so in order to do that, we have to take necessary, desperate measures to challenge these systems in order to achieve that deep change. Yeah,
absolutely. Did you have any other kind of thoughts on that before we wrap up that portion?
I feel like we've said it, and I just want to kind of conclude to be sure that remains at the frontal lobe. Like, look, keep the same energy. Keep the same energy. But just to kind of tie in everything we've talked about, I think that this is going to require social and emotional competence. You're going to have to pull from the skill set of being socially aware, because
Mhm.
it is in that and through that that you're able to empathize deeply.
Yeah.
And so this is a call to turn back again and
Yeah.
foster and cultivate those areas of social and emotional competence so that you can be present and that you can show up, because now is I'm not gonna say that now is the time, because here's the thing, it's been time.
It's been
You just
time.
late to the party. You
Overdue.
just late to the party. So
Yeah.
now that you've shown up to the party, in
Mhm.
order to stay at the party and make the party worth your while, you really do have
Mhm.
to foster and cultivate those areas of social and emotional competence, because those are your weapons. Prayer
Yeah.
and those are your weapons, in order to call for this deep change. And my hope is, again, just tying everything in, and my hope is that through that we will be able to create a space in which we can come and we can restore and repair that fractured relationship, between our whites and our blacks. Because here's the thing, I love this lady and I forget her name, but she pushes how there is no different races. Like, there's one race, there's a human race.
Mhm.
I believe that. I believe
Yeah.
that. And that is what I believe I would love for us to, as a community of people, strive for, is to repair that fractured relationship
Yeah.
between our human race.
Yeah.
Um, and so, yeah, just keep that momentum, be intentional, foster, cultivate those
Yeah.
areas of social and emotional competence, and look for, anticipate that sacred space in which we can restore and reconcile this fractured relationship in our society.
Absolutely. And so, you're not just talking about it, you're doing it. So what, you have some really amazing resources for people who, want to learn more, want to be equipped. So tell them a little bit about the courses that are going on.
Sure. So we actually had our first session. So Ryan, your brother, actually, Ryan Thomas, is one of the clinical social workers, who has been charged and has eagerly accepted, facilitating one of our social health sessions, we call them. And so this month we are focusing on, um, addressing how to manage anxiety. We're focusing on giving safe spaces to those who are feeling a little bit anxious as a result of the pandemic, but now as a result of just these recent, like,
Yeah.
blatant acts of racism. We are also providing workshops for parents, who have children who are struggling with anxiety, and also those who, don't really understand that this is traumatic.
Yeah.
Like, experiencing a pandemic is traumatic, and
Yeah.
now again, adding on top of that, witnessing the execution of another one of our Black brothers,
Yeah.
traumatic. And so one of our workshops is, we're going to actually focus on what trauma is, the 4 R's of trauma, the 3 E's of trauma, and just kind of give people some insight on what that is, understanding trauma, and then also equip you with, some skills on how to cope with traumatic experiences. Um, and so, yeah, that's pretty much all we're offering this month.
Okay.
I'll post it so that, people can see. And the catch is that all of these things are cost effective, because the mission is intact. We just want to reach people and build that social and emotional competence and be a resource to people. And so you can literally attend, the Safe Space Circle for $10.
Mm.
Confidential. You're safe. The sessions will not be recorded and they're virtual. The parent workshop, $15. And then the social health sessions, and we also have mental emotional health sessions. Those sessions that deal with, like, the mental faculties,
Sure.
and how we're managing, our thought processes and our emotions. All of those things, those two things I just mentioned, $25 for all 4 weeks, not per session, but
Yeah.
for all 4 weeks. And these
Which
sessions,
is a steal.
exactly, right? And these sessions are rendered by professionals,
Mhm.
clinical social workers, restorative coaches, and certified circle keepers, which we call restorative coaches. And so, just to learn a little bit more, I can share with you my website, which is www.bewelltools, plural.com. Also, you can, follow us on Facebook. You can find us at Be Well Tools. The Facebook page is Be Well. And I am constantly posting that flyer because this is needed. A lot of people, especially now, need, yes, thanks, Rachel. Especially now, need to sharpen and foster those areas, because if you don't, you're going to just get lost in translation, and we don't want that for you. So jump on, you're not too late, register, and we will love to support you.
And are you doing this every month? What's, okay.
Yeah. So this month we're focusing on anxiety, and next month anxiety and trauma. And next month we'll be focusing on something completely different. And so if you're interested, follow us and you'll know what we have. We do this every single month. And even when outside, as they say, opens back up, we're going to continue to offer virtual services to those who are still a little bit on edge and have their reservations with being in public. Oh, social media again. Yes. So the page is Be Well, but you can find us, you can search us up with @Be Well Tools. And then you should be able to be directed to the Be Well page. And then the actual
website. That's the website. Yep. So, and I'm going to share those resources as well. And then also I share a flyer of what June is looking like, and just again the costs and the sessions and all of that. But you definitely want to, and even if you don't use the resource personally, which I feel like you should, because everybody needs this. But even if you don't, just share it. And if you have any questions, definitely feel free to reach out. We want to make sure that our community is educated, is empowered, and is equipped to do life well. Like, that's really the point, is like, we want to do life well. We want to do life in the healthiest manner possible. We're not going to be, I love Pastor Mike Todd from Transformation Church, and he says, we're not perfect, we're progressing. But in order to be progressing, it's like you have to equip yourself. You have to do the work. And doing the work doesn't have to be this complex thing. It could be, I'm going to give an hour of my time and sit in a session and learn something. It's you guys tuning in and just being part of this conversation, and something, and my thing is like, we all at home right now, right. So thank you, Ashley, so much for joining us and just sitting in this space. Like, we're definitely going to have you back, because I know that there's so many amazing things that I'm sure people are going to be, just interested about and want to talk about. I'd love to be able to, now, one thing I have a question on, so are you guys doing virtual circles as well? Is that part of?
Yes. So that's that we call them. So I'm trying to be unique, and give and coin it where the name is like self-explanatory on what we do in those sessions. And so, yes, we call them safe space circles.
Okay.
And they're circles. And so they're only $10. They're facilitated by our restorative coach, who is a certified circle keeper. It's not me, even though I'm tempted to jump on. I'm trying to back away and realize that I'm not the only solutionist. And so, so that is one of the things that's being offered, and it will be offered monthly. And so we do have, of course, like a nature, like, what are we focusing on? What are we talking about? So all questions are going to be on life in the pandemic. What has it been like for you in a pandemic, and also in a pandemic in which you literally witnessed an execution of one of your brothers, right? And even if you're not from you don't identify as a minority male or female, just the fact that you witnessed it, how are you moved? How are you impacted? So just $10. And all the sessions, we get it. We understand that you don't want to be glued to a screen for hours upon hours. So the sessions are no more than 55 minutes. And again, they're cost effective. So join us. We would love to have you.
Yeah.
So Jessica, your question is, how can you become certified to become a circle keeper? So I can tell you where I went. But honestly, all you have to do is literally type in circle keeping certification and you'll be able to find different sources. There's many people out there who are doing it. But I went to so I'm trying to be sure I give you the correct name of the organization. So I went to Precious Blood Fellowship of Reconciliation. They are located on 51st and Elizabeth. So that's the building that I went through for the certification, but I'm inclined to believe that it was a different agency that just housed it there. I tell you what.
You get the information and then I will share it.
I want to do that
with everyone. Yeah.
Because honestly, you could just call Precious Blood and they'll direct you to the right person. phenomenal lady. The lady who did me, unfortunately, her name is Aura. She passed away.
Mm-hmm.
Powerful experience,
Mm-hmm.
powerful. But the woman who's doing now, she's phenomenal. So you'll enjoy it. It's interactive. You're not just sitting. Might I add, circles are not just let's just talk. They're sometimes it is, and that's fine. But you can also include exercises because everything is in purpose to move the entire group to that intended or that anticipated outcome by
Yeah.
any means. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's, and I know, Jessica, you had mentioned earlier about sister circles and stuff. And another really good resource is Sister Afia. If you've never heard of her, she does some amazing things, and I could share some things. But the founder of that is Kamisha, and she's great because I've actually been able to partner with her in the past and facilitate some of those circles. But she was doing monthly sister circles, and it was just for women, specifically women of color. And it was this safe space to be able to, it kind of was almost like a therapy group, but not necessarily. It was more of just like a processing group. Everyone kind of helped each other to process whatever was going on. And so it wasn't as, I guess, structured as a restorative circle, because it wasn't like, okay, this is the goal that we're working towards. It was just kind of like, these are the issues that we're dealing with today. This is what's going on, and kind of processing that. And then the facilitator was pretty much just there to guide the conversation. But that's something that's really powerful too. And I just wanted to say that because I know you had mentioned something about sister circles, and just being in a place full of strong Black women being vulnerable with one another. And I think that was really powerful too. So I'll make sure that I know, I'm not sure if she's doing them virtually right now, but I definitely can, just link to her site as well, because that was a really good resource if you just have information about what specifically sister circles might look like.
So, Rachel, while you were talking, I looked up the information.
Okay.
So the name of the organization is Community Justice for Youth Institute, and the web address is cjyi.org. And they have some trainings coming up, but they're tentative due to the pandemic. So here, I can even give you a number, and you can go from there. So it's 312-842-5345. And so
312-842-5345.
Yes. And that is one resource. And then again, you can call Precious Blood and call there, and they will give you next steps in order to register for the ones that they facilitate.
Okay. Fantastic. Thank you. And again, just thank you so much for just being here with us, sharing your wealth of knowledge. Like I said, I'm trying to be creative and figure out how we can get you back and just talk some more. But I think this was such a necessary conversation. And so I'm super excited. You guys definitely check out BeWellTools.com. Find a course that is best for you. Join a circle. Do whatever you need to do, so to, again, equip yourself for a healthy life. Until next time, I will see you guys later. Thank you for joining the conversation. Bye.